अवतार मेहर बाबा की jai. Welcome everyone to this very, very special and sacred session on Baba's interment, which is actually on 7th of February. And today we are with dearest Baba lover Jimmy Uncle, Jimmy Khan from Mumbai, to share with us some important aspects right from the building or the creation of the Crypt and the Samadhi, which Baba did almost 38 years before dropping his body. Today, Jimmy Uncle will share a few pointers right from that time, leading up to 31st January 1969, and the 1 week where Baba's body was kept for worldwide darshan of his beloved premis across the world. We welcome Jimmy Uncle. Thank you, Jimmy Uncle, for once again being with us this year. And this is our 3rd year for holding this special session on the interment day, which is a very, very powerful, significant day, because it is the day where beloved Baba rested inside the Samadhi to give us his eternal darshan. Avtar Meher Baba ki jai. Jimmy Uncle, over to you.
Roshni, am I kind of visible? Because I can't see myself, so I don't know exactly.
No,
Am I
yes,
okay?
of course. Yes, and I'm spotlighting you, so we can only see you.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Please begin, Jimmy Uncle.
Thank you, Roshni, for the invite. This is one subject which is closest not only to my heart, but to each and every Baba lover's heart. As Roshni has suggested to me, I will start right from the very beginning. I'm not very good at history, but whatever I've read over the years, I'll share with you. And as Roshni has suggested, I'll break it into 2 parts. Up to the first part will end on 31st Jan 1969. And part B will be the days thereafter and the 7 days of internment. And time permitting, I'll go beyond that as well. But let's see how it works. To begin with, let me give a little bit of a background in the sense there was nothing like Upper Mehrabad. In fact, in those days, the word Mehrabad had not even germinated or start. Nobody had even suggested that we should call it Mehrabad. So there was no Mehrabad per se, but in the very early years, I'm talking about 21, 22, when the first time Baba went to this place near Arangaon, there was a post office, and a few of the males were housed in this post office, which was very close to the railway line. And thereafter, maybe after a year or so, the first women arrived. The word Mandli was still not coined. I repeat, the word Mandli was still not coined. Just 4 women arrived: Meramai's mother, Naldi Khorshid, and Naja. These were the 4 ladies that Baba invited, but they came and went. They didn't stay permanently initially. So there was nothing like Upper Mehrabad or the hill. But off and on, Baba would go to the hill. He would go inside the water tank. There was a ladder for him. And he would go inside this water tank and sit for a few hours, come back. So that was the genesis of the hill, or in today's language, Upper Mehrabad. Then Baba asked someone to dig a khadda. A khadda is not exactly a hole, but a dig out, kind of a dig out. So Baba would go into this khadda, in this dig out, and he would sit there, maybe with the help of a ladder or something, because there were no steps in those days. So Baba would go into this khadda and he would sit. It's officially recorded as khadda, and therefore I'm using the word khadda. So Baba would go inside this khadda, he would sit for hours, he would come out, and then he would come down to lower Mehrabad, etc., etc. Then after some time, Baba said that, can you make a kind of a shade for me, a kind of a temporary shade? So it was a kacha makan, it was a makeshift kind of four walls and maybe a door or whatever it is, and temporary shade. So that is how, that was step 2. Then let's come back to post office once again. This was during the British Raj. The rails also, the railway belonged to the British Raj. And the post office was very close to the tracks. So the railway officials came and said that you demolish this post office. It was not in use as post office. It was long not used. So they said that you demolish this post office. They came after a while, maybe after a few months, and the post office still stood as it was. So they said, look, they are coming for the second time. Please demolish this post office. The third time they came, they said that this is not a warning anymore. When we come next, either you have demolished the post office. If you do it, you keep the stones. If we come and do it, if you have not done it, if we come and do it, we'll take up with the stones. Now let's understand that in 20s, there were only 2 items which were used for building constructions work, stones and wood. Basically, these 2 things. So the matter went to Baba, and Baba said, let's break it ourselves so that we can put these stones to use. So the post office was broken, and Baba said, take all the stones up the hill. Now, I don't know how these heavy stones, they must have taken up the hill. But whatever it is, part of the stones were used for constructing the Samadhi. Now, I gauge and understand that by now, people got the idea that this is going to be Baba's Samadhi. So long and short, Baba gave some parameters as to how long, what height, length, breadth, etc. So this stone masonry work got started, and they start building the pakka, or the perfect construction of the Samadhi. Now, I think it was when it was the first time that these 4 walls were constructed, the doors of the Samadhi, in those days there was no Samadhi, the doors were stolen overnight. And there's a story which is attached to that. We will not go into it, but the fact remains that Baba's Samadhi's doors were stolen. So now when this Pakka Makan or the Pakka Samadhi was built, this law that we see came up. But the top was just kind of makeshift top with some planks, etc. And after a few years, Baba called Navroji. Navroji was Rhoda and Arnav's mysteries, Arnav Dadachandji's father, Navroji, our current chairman's grandfather. So Navroji, who was a Babalaur, who was a Chandji, he was an architect. So, and he was a builder as well. So he was called and he was told to build a dome. So that is how Navroji built a dome as per Baba's specifications. Then after some time, the 4 emblems of the 4 great religions that we see, the 4 emblems, they were ordered in Bombay, in those days Bombay. So at Bombay, the 4 small structures depicting 4 religions were made. They were brought to Mehrabad and they were installed on 4 corners. So one day someone asked Baba, what about Buddhism? Buddhism is not represented. And on top of the dome, what you see, that golden color, is called the kalach. So Baba said kalach represents Buddhism. So that is how Buddhism also got into the. Very few people know that Baba said that this represents Buddhism. So basically, that's how the structure came into being. Just give me a minute. Yes, as you face Samadhi, on the right of Samadhi, adjoining the Samadhi, a platform was made, quite a big platform. And at the end of the platform, there were maybe 6 or 7 meditation cabins. That when Baba dropped his body, and when I went there, I'd seen these meditation cabins, and they were there for quite a while. And after a few years, the platform went, and the meditation cabins, they also went. So the area between Baba's Samadhi and Baba's cabin was blank. Yeah, you can see the platform behind, and you can also see the meditation cabins. When the Westerners came, I think it was in 56, that Baba took them up the hill, and that's what you see on your screen. Baba took them up the hill, and Baba took them inside also and explained, etc., etc. And you can see Baba's symbol also on the Samadhi front side, Master in Servitude. So basically, this is a very early photo of Baba with his Western mandali, Master in Servitude, etc. And we do see the emblem also. Basically, that's that. Okay. In 1968, when Dada Chandji's children got wedded, when Baba's nephew Dara and Amrit got wedded, my mother was one of the invitees. She had gone there in December 68. So after these functions were over, Baba told this Parsi group that had come from Bombay to go to Berazar and visit his Samadhi. So now Samadhi is a resting place. It's a solemn place. And they're all in a merry mood, in a happy mood. And to go and see Baba's Samadhi people were not happy to see Baba's Samadhi. But whatever it is, what Baba said, go and see my Samadhi. Now, what you need to understand is that Mehrabad was a no-go place for Baba lovers. As long as Baba was in body, Berazat was not a place where, Mehrabad, I beg your pardon, where you can just walk in. The orders were not to disturb Mehrabad, people should not go. So when my mummy went with the Parsi group, that was the first time that our mother saw Mehrabad. They went up the hill, they went inside the Samadhi, and they saw the blank, the crypt. They saw the crypt from which was there. They saw the crypt. So mom did come and tell us that after the celebrations, I, along with the others, went and I saw Baba's crypt. So that was that. Yes, during Baba's time, a lady painter, I think she was a Swiss lady, Helen Dam. She came to meet Baba. And Baba knew that she was a painter. So Baba said, would you do me a favor? Would you paint the inside of the Samadhi? Helen was thrilled. It's an honor for lifetime. And Helen was given an assistant to help her because they had to put up a scaffolding, and Helen would go up the scaffolding and do the paintings, slipping on her back like Michelangelo did. So she was given an assistant as well. So that is how she did it. Now, yes, this is it. Now, Helen was looking for a theme as to what theme she should be using inside the Samadhi. Now, this is the first time a Swiss lady is in India. She is in a place where there are only locals, And she saw all the locals from Pimpalgaon, Arangaon, etc., etc. And she made these people as a medium to paint. And this is what she painted. Now, according to me, this is not the original painting, because over the years, this painting faded. And painting faded, but by that time, I think Baba had dropped his body, etc. So this was repainted by someone else. I don't know. Now, can you go back to that frame, please, Roshni? Yes. You see this window in the front, and you see that frame in front of the window. Now, this is what I had seen in the early days. And in the early days, this was a frame that was placed over here. This frame has now been shifted to Baba's cabin. And this window had glass panes, and there was a lamppost behind. So at night, we would see the lamp behind. We would see people walking past Samadhi as we sat in front of Samadhi. So and suddenly one day, I see oil on canvas painting on a mountain which covered the window. Now, the story behind this oil on canvas is that an American Baba lover, I forget his name, he was a painter. This happened much after Baba dropped his body. And the Women Monthly gave him a photograph of Baba seated somewhere, I forget the name of that place, if someone can help me. In Italy, where Baba had stayed, Baba had said that photo the Women Monthly gave to this artist and said, this is how it should be looking. This is the pose we are looking for. And the story goes that 6 times he brought this oil on canvas to Merazad from US. He brought it in the form of a roll. And 6 times the Women Monthly said, the nose is not proper, the lips are not proper, the eyes are not proper, the position of the hand is not proper. So poor guy took this roll. I said it came in a roll, paper roll, canvas roll. Poor guy took this roll 6 times back to the US. The 7th time he brought it, and the lady said, perfect. Yeah, Rano was there. How can I forget Rano? So Rano would say, the ears are not good, the hair is not good, blah, blah, blah. So finally, this was accepted, and it was mounted, and that is where it is since then. Yeah. Roshni asked me to speak about some orders pertaining to Samadhi that Baba could have given. And the first order that Baba had given is that when I drop my body, and if I drop my body in India, my body should be brought from wherever I drop my body in India, and it should be placed in Samadhi. He said in India, and I've read it in India. So, well, that's what they did eventually. The second was that after I drop my body, Begin the Begin should be placed 7 times. Now, some of you may know, some of you may not know that the body was brought and it was first put in Baba's cabin, not directly in Samadhi. It was put in Baba's cabin. So this is where Begin the Begin was played. Now you'll ask me why so? Why was it not? What was the rationale of taking Baba's body in Baba's cabin and not directly in Samadhi? So let's go one day prior, which was 31st Jan 1969. Padri had gone. You all know that Padri stayed at Mehrabad, Lower Mehrabad. Padri had gone to Baba on 30th Jan or 31st Jan, I think one night earlier, 30th Jan, to give Baba homeopathy pills. He was called. So he had gone to Merazad. And when Baba dropped his body, the Mandli said, part.
So Mandli said so?
No, there's a disturbance at the back. I'm waiting.
Sorry,
Yeah.
somebody's mic was unmuted.
Yes, it's okay. It's okay. It happens all the time. So Padre Kaka was at Mirazar. So the Mandli said, Padre, please rush. Padre, please rush to Merabar and prepare the Samadhi. Now, what exactly do you mean by prepare the Samadhi? That the crypt was as it is. The crypt was, there was no earth on the crypt as such, but at the base, there were tiles. You know, in India, we call it ladis. It was clad with tiles, clad with ladis. So Padre goes to Mehrabad, he goes up the hill. He carries a few local guys with him, and they start digging, taking out the tiles as they break the tiles, take them out, throw them somewhere, and they were preparing the place and to level it again. So that took time. And by the time the hearse came, Samadhi was not ready. And that is the reason why Baba's body was kept in the cabin. So, once Padre said, Samadhi is ready, you can transfer Baba's body here. So that is how, and that is when Baba's body was transferred and kept in Samadhi. That's the gist of it. Yes. Baba had also said that Mera's body should be kept as it is on the right of, as he slept on the right of my Samadhi, and monies to the others he gave option of either cremation or burial. And all the ladies chose to be cremated. So all the ladies, one by one, cremated down the hill, and their ashes were brought up the hill. And there are urns which are kept in this small, you call it flagstone, you call it the resting stone, or whatever you call it. So this is where Meru was the last one to go. She being the youngest, Meru was the last one to go. So when I saw for the first time, there was no such thing as right and left. There was nothing on either side, just Baba's body. Yes. I saw Baba's body for the very first time on the 1st of February 1969. But we all know Baba dropped his body on 31st Jan. We left Bombay at night by night train. We reached in the morning of 1st Feb, and one by one we went inside. Now, when Baba's body was kept, you saw the photograph. Can we go back to the photograph, please? Yeah, in the meantime, the stretcher on which Baba's body was brought from Mirazar, the trust brought over the stretcher, which is still there in Baba's cabin. But the hearse or the ambulance in which Baba's body came, and after Baba's body was taken out of the hearse went down the hill. And as it went down the hill, it just stopped dead. When I say it just stopped dead, I mean it just stopped dead. The engine became cold, the engine seized. They had to bring specialist mechanics from Ahmednagar so that they can come and start the ambulance. It didn't start. It just didn't start. The logic being that on this stretcher and in this ambulance or hearse, whatever you call it, it should not be used again for any other human. That was the rationale. So the stretcher was brought over, the hearse was dead, and that's it. So eventually, a, a, a towing crane was brought, and the hearse was towed away literally, and it was sold for scrap. So that's the story of the stretcher and the hearse. As you see, Baba's body laying in peace, you see on all over his body, you see this blackish brownish pieces. These are ice blocks. All over you see ice blocks. Though it was January, February, in the afternoon, and this is a stone structure, don't forget. And stone gets very hot. So to keep Baba's body going, they had put blocks of ice all over to keep Baba's body going. And Jal Dastur, everybody knows Jal Dastur. Jal Dastur would go down. There are 5 steps. You can't see 5 steps. You can only see the last step. But there are 5, rather there were, not are, there were 5 stone steps, heavy stone steps going down. So Jal would go in front. I would go behind Jal with a tokri full of black salt or rock salt or whatever you call it. And Jal would very gingerly walk on this ice. Mind you, this went on for quite a while. Jal would, you can see there's no other place where you can put your feet. So Jal would balance himself on this ice blocks, and I'm on the last, where you see the flowers. I would be standing on the last step, holding the wicker basket of whatever you call it, with blacks. And Jal would take a handful of it from the basket that I was holding, and he would spray it on the ice blocks. This went on for quite a while. And imagine Giles standing on these ice blocks for such a long time. This we did at least 3 times that I remember. So we did that. Then we would sit, the 3 of us on either side. We would sit on this parapets or whatever you call. Will you take the cursor there, Roshni, on either side? So yes, we would be seated here, 3 of us on right side, 3 of us on the left side, and we would fan Baba's body. There would be a lot of flies around. So to shoo off the flies, we would sit and fan Baba's body to shoo off the flies. So this we did a number of times. And my sister Betsy, who was very young, she was maybe still a teenager, and she saw Baba opening his eyes. And she was very young, rather immature. So she got frightened. She dropped the fan and she ran out of Samadhi. Even I saw Baba's eyes flickering, not completely open, but I did see once Baba's eye flickering. I did see that, and I'm a witness to that. So this is what I saw. Now you see the condition of this painting. This is to the level at which the paintings over years had fallen off. Let's put it simply, the paint had just fallen off. And so after years, another artist who had come over, he was told to redo the Samadhi. Now what happened was, if the wall is flaky, everybody can understand this. If the wall is flaky, you can't apply paint on flaky wall. So you need to, I'll talk about this as well. Just skip this as it is. So that gentleman, that painter started scraping the wall lightly so that the flakes could go off so that he can start his painting. And he came to a point where he realized that he can't see anything. Maybe he flaked off too much. He was so nervous. He had ruined history. this man had ruined history. And he prayed to Baba, Baba, please, I'm so sorry, please help me. I can't see anything, Baba, please help me, help me. Somehow he saw the outlines, and there were photographs, there were some films of the original paintings, which also helped him. But he could see the outlines. So with the help of photographs and the films, there were no videos then. So with that help, he repainted the whole thing. Now you see this, you see the level which has gone down 6 to 8 inches. Everybody thought that this was a miracle, this was a miracle. This happened maybe a few months after Baba dropped his body. To me, this was not a miracle. To me, what happened, possibly what happened was that a wooden box that was made to cover Baba's body, possibly that wooden box collapsed. And because that wooden box collapsed, the earth collapsed too.
Well, amazing.
Yeah.
Yes,
Hey,
that is a possibility. Now, for quite a while means quite a while, there was just raw earth for maybe months, maybe a few years. So we would see raw earth. And on this raw earth, all the garlands would be put. They are not covered with anything. It was raw earth. Chaddars would be put, saris would be put. That's besides the point. But I have been a witness to raw earth for quite a while. One second, please. Then the Mandli decided that befitting Baba, we should have a kind of a tombstone. Sorry, not tombstone. A kind of a stone on Baba's crypt as such. So Rana went to Italy and she scouted for the best stone that she could, best marble, pure marble that she could find. And she laid her hand on one and she gave the specifications to this craftsman and told him to cut according to what she wanted or the Mandli wanted. Then the Mandli had also given her the wordings that could be etched in gold. It's called etching. That could be etched in gold on the stone. So finally, Rano came back and this stone, which weighs a few tons, it came by ship, and that took some time. Finally, by a truck, it was brought to Upper Mehrabad. Now you got to imagine how they unloaded this, what do you call it, a big crate, like something like a crate weighing tons, how they load it from the truck. That's possibly an easier task, but to open up the crate and to switch this marble without touching anywhere, to dig it, to take it inside the Samadhi, they must have taken it vertical inside. That's the only way the stone could have, the marble could have gone inside. And what they used was muscle power and ropes. These are the only two things they had in their powers to use. This was done again under the supervision of Padri Kaka. And then now it has gone this way. You got to make it horizontal and then slide it in proper place without even a slight niche anywhere. A very clean work. Now there was an American there at this point in time, and he filmed the whole gamut of things as to how it was done. Sadly for history, sadly for us, we don't know how this was done, because this film was given to Padri, but that's the end of it. That's the end of it. Nobody knows where the film is. Nobody has been able to tell whether it is in archives, it's not in archives, whether it's gone forever. But well, that is that. So this is the stone slab. Now Roshni was telling me was something like slab 1 and slab 2. Roshni, what exactly did you mean?
Chivengal, we had read somewhere that there was an initial closing that was done, and then the marble that is there right now, which is etched, as you were saying, came in much later, and there was a big story behind it of, how it was procured and how it was got
Right,
to the
right.
Samadhi.
No, when you say it was originally closed, what exactly have you read?
I had read that there was a there was another piece of marble first there, and then this subsequently came after it got ready and everything, and with great certain difficulties that went through, this was brought and then this was kept. So I wanted to clarify what was that story actually.
To be very honest, Roshni, I've been going to Samadhi for the last 54 years, and I've not seen any other marvel or any other closing. This is the only thing that I remember, and my memory serves me well. But if I have to stand corrected, no issues on that.
We want you to clarify that. That is why it was
Okay,
just
so
a conversation.
this is my clarification that I have not seen any other marble or even a wooden plank or nothing. That I have not seen any such thing. Straight away I saw this. Straight away I saw this marble. So in the early days, uh, we would go to Samadhi at 7 in the morning, 7 in the evening, and at night we would carry Petromax, Hurricane. There were no lights. Mehrabad had no lights for years together, years together. So even up the hill, we would carry a Petromax, Hurricane, lantern, whatever you call it. And one of them would be placed inside the Samadhi, and a couple of them would be outside the Samadhi. And when the artist started, before the artist started, we would go inside the Samadhi. We used to do Baba's Aarti morning and evening inside the Samadhi. Well, if it was overcrowded, some had to stand outside, but most of us were inside the Samadhi, and we did the artists. I do not recollect music and sing song in the very early years. Just the artists. That's it. I don't recollect. Maybe I stand corrected, but that is my recollection. Then after years, the shade, the shade where we do arti today, the shade came into play. The benches came into play. The rugs came into play. And then the musicians started sitting there, and the organ and the guitars. These are all gradual metamorphosis, as I call things. Things started growing gradually. So this is what I have been a witness to. Now, the women mandli from time to time would come from Merazar. On some good days, they would come from Merazar. They would go first into the water tower. They would sit there for a while. And after a while, the women mandli, along with their deputies, would come out from the east room. For those who know east room, they know where is east room in the water tower. So from the east room, they would come and they would go inside the Samadhi. The doors would be closed and they would sit inside for a while. And again, the door would be open and they would go back to the east room or they would go back to Merazar. Now that also went on for some time. Now, just give me a second. Yeah, in the early days, in the mornings after the aarti, Roshan Kerawala would sing Paname Yazdan, which Baba had taught her how to sing. Well, for Zoroastrians, this is a Khorshid Niyaz, which normally is, and it's a morning prayer. Khorshid Niyaz is a morning prayer. And it is a long prayer. And Baba had remarked once that only the first para or the first stanza I had written when I was Zoroaster. It is the dastus or the priests who have added and elongated the prayer. So what Roshan used to sing was what Baba had taught her how to sing. So after the aarti, Roshan would sing this. Give me a minute.
Jimmy uncle, in the meanwhile, can I just read this part from the booklet, The Tomb Shrine, about
Please,
the thing?
please do.
So, in the booklet, The Tomb Shrine of Avatar Meher Baba, it reads, on January 31st, 1969, Avatar Meher Baba dropped his body at Meherazad and his body was brought to Upper Meherabad to be buried. As the coffin and tomb were being prepared, Baba's body was kept inside his cabin on the stretcher that is still there. His body was then placed on the lid of the coffin and lowered into the crypt. It was kept surrounded by flowers, and according to hints given by him, his body was uninterred for 7 days so that his lovers from around the world might have one last chance to see his physical form. There was no sign of decomposition when the box of the coffin was placed over his body and buried on February 7th. The Italian Carrara marble slab over Baba's tomb was installed by Padri in late 1971. The exterior colors of the Samadhi were chosen by Mehra and Mani in the late 1980s, and a complete restoration of the original building was done in 1990. In 1991, in lieu of a stained glass work by Charlie Morton for the north window, Mani decided that his painting should be installed there instead. Today, the Samadhi is the most sacred place at Mehrabad and the heart of the legacy that the trust caretakes for humanity. Avtar Meher Baba ki jai.
Yeah.
Yes, Jimmy Uncle, please.
Yeah. In the early days, it was Mansari. We all know Mansari stayed near the water tower. So in the early days, it was Mansari who opened the lock in the morning and who led the artists, morning and evening artists. After her demise, it was Rhoda Mistry who took over. For a few years, she did this job. And upon her moving to Merazat, it was Dolly Dastur who took over. And Dolly Dastur led the artists, etc. And after Dolly, the others are now leading the prayers. I wanted to share that as well. Now let me come to my story, which will take maybe another 20 minutes, which will be good enough. So on the 1st of Feb 1969, I enter Samadhi. I see Meherabad for the first time. I go up the hill for the very first time with a Bombay group. And the seniors went first, naturally. And then I was maybe in my early 20s. So I was one of the last ones to go inside. So this is for the first time that I'm seeing Samadhi. And as I inch forward, I go inside, I see Samadhi, and I see Baba's body in the crypt. And as compared to Meher Baba that I'd seen live and bubbly and full of mischief and a lot of actions and gestures, I see Baba wrapped up in white, and it was, to put it mildly, it was very disturbing. But that was that, and I knew that Baba had gone. So I go down 5 steps, I could touch Baba's feet with both my hands. And I stood there for a while. Then I backed up and I left the Samadhi. So this was the very first time that I entered the Samadhi. And one day after the others, the second day, the third day, and talking about keeping Baba's body for 7 days, uh, there were 4 doctors present at this point in time. Goher, of course, Dr. Ginde, then Donkin, and let's say 3 doctors, and and uh, and Ginde, being a very famous neurosurgeon of Bombay, he didn't like the idea to keep Baba's body. So he would impress upon the trustees to close Baba's body at the earliest. And there was this tussle between the trustees and the doctors, whether to keep the body going or not to keep the body going, etc. I beg your pardon. Let me go back to the marble slab because this is important. When the marble slab arrived, Padri saw pink veins on the stone, on the marble stone. For whatever reason, he didn't like the idea the veins being on the marble. He said, over my dead body, this stone is not going inside. This marble is not going inside. And there were a lot of exchange of thoughts on the subject. Finally, the Mandli prevailed upon Padri that, now don't be ridiculous. This is Samadhi. This is not just anything else. And this kind of pink vein should not bother us, etc. Padri relented, and that is how the marble went inside. So that's something I didn't want to miss out on. So let's come back to the doctors and the Mandli. So finally, what was as a compromise, what was decided was that these 3 doctors would go inside Samadhi. They would close the doors. I've been a witness to this. The 3 doctors would go inside. They would close the doors behind them. And one of the doctors, Goher, would go down the steps. She would open up Baba's torso. Baba's torso was covered with white cloth, chadar. So she would rest her legs on the ice blocks. She would open up Baba's torso. She would kind of press, and the body was holding. There were no signs of decomposition of the body, in short. And she would look up to the 2 doctors, and then they would close it up. They would come out. They would go to the East Room where the women Mandli stayed, and they would discuss with the women Mandli, and they said that Baba's body is doing well. Baba's body is holding, so we can go till evening. They went inside twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening, and this repeated. Now, Ginde, being a super specialist and a very senior doctor of surgeon of India, he didn't like this idea of keeping Baba's body open. So after 4 days, he left. That I don't want to be a witness to Baba's body decomposing, and people will say, history will say that Ginde was present and he didn't do anything. So after 4 days, he left Mehrabad. But this went on for 7 days, and Baba's body was holding well. On the 7th of February, it was announced that tomorrow was going to be Baba's birthday as per Zoroastrian calendar. That was the 7th of February. Tomorrow we'll be closing Baba's body. So please have your darshan, and tomorrow will be the last day. We go to tomorrow, the 7th, and on the 7th at noon, it was announced that now we are closing Baba's body. Please stay back. Please stay back. Let the volunteers do their work. Please stay back. Now, human psychology works in a reverse direction. When you're told to stay back, you try to push in. Everybody tried to push in. Everybody tried to, maybe to have the last darshan. I don't know. But there was this kind of mayhem going on. And there were 3 policemen wielding their lathis, their batons, and they were pushing people. They were pushing people. And I realized that this is it. I've been here for 7 days. This is it for me. So I walk out from there and I go and sit myself. Today, what is the museum? That is the West Room. It has a niche. It has a green door. It has a niche. So I sat in that niche, wanted to close my eyes and be at peace with myself. After a while, Meru comes running from the East Room. The East Room is behind, and the West Room is in the front. So Meru comes running from behind, and she wanted to go to Samadhi, but she saw me. She saw me seated there. She said, Jimmy, get up, Jimmy, get up. And there was a wicker basket full of roses, red roses. It was a big thing, maybe 1.5 foot tall. It was that big, a basket with all red roses. And Meru hands it over to me and says, give it to Jal and tell him that, oh, Baba's body is not closed. And you put it on Baba's body before it is closed. So I'm with this, these flowers are from Mera, and Mera wants to convey. So I go from behind Baba's cabin because there was lesser crowd at the back. So I go from behind Baba's cabin and I said, please side, please excuse. Flowers from Mera, please excuse, please side. So I make my way from behind Baba's cabin. I go behind the Samadhi and I come from where Mera's tomb is. I come from there and I come in the front. And fortunately, Jal was at the door. He was inside the Samadhi, but he was facing outside. So I'm telling Jal, these are the flowers from Mera, and these are to be put on Baba's body. And I hope Baba's body is not covered. But in hindsight, I think that Baba's body was already covered with the box that you talked about, Roshni talked about. And the roses were kept, I presume, on the box. Now, what did I miss? Which part of history did I miss? Because, and in a way good for me. What I missed was, because I went there, because I sat in the niche, I never saw the box. I never saw the box. I had never seen the box where it was kept these days. And the ropes with the help of which the box was lowered, and the lowering of the box, this part, I will not say I missed out, but this part I did not see. I did not see this part of the box being lowered, etc. Because by the time I came, I think the show was almost over. The box was already lowered inside. I presume so. Because when they carried the box from outside, inside the Samadhi, that part I had not seen. So long and short, the flowers were accepted from, yes, why I say that I came late and the box was already lowered is, the moment I gave flowers to Jal, immediately Jal says, Jimmy, get me the earth, matti lao. Now, if you say, get me the earth, I gave a completely blank look to Jal. Because I didn't know what he meant. I didn't understand what he was trying to say. So Jal is telling me, can't you see her? Get the earth, come on, get the earth. Now what happened was, which I missed out seeing, today where there is Meramais, tomb, at this very spot, the earth was brought from wherever, and a mound was kept there. There was a gamela there, or maybe a couple of gamelas. Yeah, two gamelas. Gamelas are steel pans to carry earth, to carry the earth. And there were a couple of spades there. So I take this gamela, I fill this gamela with the earth, I lift it. It's pretty heavy. You can imagine it's pretty heavy. So I lift it and I give it to Jal. Jal takes it from my hand and he says, get the other one, get the other one. Now I get hold of the other one. But by the time I start filling in the earth, there were others, and the others also wanted to help. So they grabbed the spade from my hand, they grabbed the gamela from my hand, and they started filling it up. So my job was done. I had brought the flowers for Baba, the last flowers to enter Samadhi. I'm happy to say, went through my hand. The first earth that covered Baba's body went through my hand. I was happy in a sense. Maybe in retrospect, I would say I was happy, but that is it. Then I realized that my work is done. So I backed out. I moved out. And then after everything was done, the volunteers started. You know who were inside Samadhi. You've seen a number of films of who were inside Samadhi when Baba's body was lowered. So one by one, they all came out. And by 1 o'clock, everything was over. And for one last darshan, one by one, we went inside, we bowed down. This time, we are just touching the mitti or the earth, and that is it. And we came out. And by afternoon, by evening, everyone moved out. They went. The next day, we go up the hill, and there is Erich, and we are telling her, not me, the seniors were telling Erich that we take your leave, we are going now. So this, I have heard Erich saying this, that everybody is gone. They are still ringing in my ear after 54 years. Everybody is gone. You are also going away. This happened at Sabha where today there is Sabha Erich was standing there and he's telling the elders that you're also going away. Everybody has gone away. So the elders said that, Erich, we came for 1 day. You all know that initially it was said that Baba's body will be closed the next day morning, which was the 1st of February. But here we stayed for 7 long days. And Jal and the others said that, well, we came for 1 night, we stayed for 7 nights. We are going back, we are going home. So that was the parting shot. And from there, we left for Mumbai and we came back.
Can I read this little part? It is from Mehra Arjani's blog about the tombstone. Before we open up the question answers.
Please.
The story of the stone, how Baba's tombstone happened. All of us have seen it, we have all bowed down to it. But how did this particular slab of marble come to be blessed to become the Avatar's tombstone in his Samadhi? After a particularly successful session of fencing in Mehrazad, where 2 contentious areas were finally fenced in with the help of our local police force, I went to Mehrabad yesterday, this is an old blog, and said thank you to him who made it all possible. Later, while I was treating Meherwan Jasawala, before he went to bed, we started reminiscing about the tomb, and then I asked Meherwan if he remembered how we got the marble that now forms Baba's tombstone. It is an interesting tale. It all started with beloved Baba dropping his body on 31st January 1969, of course. It was a given that in time, once the earth had settled on his body, a stone would have to be put on the crypt. A fitting memorial would have to be found, one that befitted the avatar of the ages Samadhi. Rano Gali, Baba's Mandli, and a very accomplished artist in her own right, had ideas about what it should be like. She had also around that time received an inheritance from her father. He had been a very successful lawyer in New York and had left her a substantial inheritance. This was Baba's perfect timing in action. She decided that the best use of this money would be to get a beautiful slab of Carrara marble from Italy. Rano asked Fred and Ella Winterfeld to go to Italy and pick out the stone, told them what needed to be engraved on the slab, and specified that it should be pink and gold veined marble. This is one of the rarest marbles, and to get such a big slab would not only be very expensive but also very difficult. Once it was bought, getting it to India and finally to Baba's Samadhi in Arangaon would be an even bigger challenge. But hey, it was for Rano's beloved Baba, and nothing was going to stop her from trying her very best. So the plan was put into action. Fred and Ella went to Italy and found out what they thought was the perfect slab. It was then commissioned to be cut and engraved, the writing to be highlighted in 24 karat gold inlay. In time, the stone was ready. Then it was shipped through a very circuitous route because the import duty on this slab would have been almost impossible for the newly emerged trust to pay. There was just no money in those days. After many travels and travails, it arrived in Mumbai by sea. Later, it arrived in a truck to Bindra House, and we had it there for a day or two. It was put in Merwan's room, which Baba used whenever he stayed in Bindra House. I remember looking at this huge slab with awe. I'd never seen a slab of marble so beautiful. It was waiting to be collected and transported to Mehrabad, where Padri had a team of 12 workers, all strong men, drilling daily to pick up this huge weight and carefully put it in place over Baba's crypt. Typical Padri, he had been practicing for months since he knew that the stone was ordered and being brought over to Mehrabad. There were no cranes, no mechanical aids to put the marble in place, only muscle power. Mervan says that the stone weighed over a ton. Meanwhile, there was a big commotion. The slab had a flaw. After all this trouble, there was a dark vein, not pink or gold, running through the lower part of the marble slab. What to do? The company that had made the stone was contacted and offered to replace the stone if it was sent back. Sent back? It had only just arrived after much time and effort being put into getting it to India. Were they mad? I'm not sure who among the Manli came to look at it and said that there was no need for any exchange. The stone was perfect as it was. But it was a great relief to all that this was it. By now, the earth over Baba's body had settled. During the months between the crypt being filled and the stone being set, there was gradual settling of the grave. A strange phenomena was observed. There was a deeper depression where Baba's head was, and a very strong scent of roses came out of that part. It filled the tomb with the fragrance. I remember going to take darshan around that time and smelling this fragrance and feeling a deep happiness that Baba was everywhere now and he was telling us so. When the marble arrived in Mehrabad, Padri's workers executed the maneuver flawlessly. The stone was home. It had come to wear its destiny through many lifetimes as stone had brought it to the avatar's final abode on this gross plane. This is a unique twist to the ending of this story. Pink and gold veined Carrara marble is very rare. So rare that the Italian government banned its export. Mervan says that this was probably the last slab to be exported, and then there was no more. Baba allowed Rano's wish to be fulfilled because she loved him so. Avatar Meher Baba ki jai. How beautiful is that? So we open the room for questions. If any questions or anything anyone has heard and wants to ask or clarify with Jimmy Uncle, please unmute or put up your digital hand and we'll unmute. Anybody wishes to ask anything or share any experience of your parents or family members who were there during the interment or during that 1 week when Baba dropped his body.
I need to go.
Okay.
I would like to thank you, Jimmy, very, very much. It was very special. And it's for me, I didn't know a great deal of it. And I'm very grateful to you. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Jai Baba.
Yeah.
Jai Baba. Thank you, Inka. We have Tim who would like to share. Yes, Tim.
Yes, well, it's not sharing. I just was very moved when I heard the story that Mansari told my wife Neela. I can't remember the whole story, but I think it's when Baba's body was moved from the cabin to the Samadhi.
They used to cover it with a sheet.
And it was covered with a sheet.
No, after the earth.
You explain, Neela.
Yes, after the earth was there, and they used to cover it with sheet, and then these little balls, keeping the sheet in place. And so she used to come in the morning to open, but before she'd opened it, she could see there's a little space between the two doors. She could see that somebody was moving, something was moving inside, but everything was closed. I mean, the windows were closed, door was locked. What could it be? She couldn't see the feet or head. She could just see this white. And when she got inside, there was nobody there, but the sheet had moved as if, like when you get up out of the bed and you move your bedclothes like that. She said the sheet was moved like that. So she quickly put it all back properly. But there was a wonderful fragrance, roses. And she then sent one of the little boys to go down to Padri. And he was bathing at the time, so he didn't come straight away. So she sent the boy again. She wanted him to check what is happening. He came up and he could also smell this. And he turned to her and he said sharply, "Are you wearing perfume?" She said, "No." And of course, it was, she would never, I never knew her to wear perfume. But it was amazing. But at another time, she's also seen as if Baba had come out of the window, as if the window had opened and somebody came out. So she said she saw these things. And one last thing was when the body was first brought up, and Padri said to her, "You look after, stay here with the body." And he was getting the prepared with the men. And she was looking. Now she felt quite hurt because she had not seen Baba for some time. She could only go and see him whenever he called. Otherwise, she had to stay within the railway line. So she had not been able to see him before the end of this point, She felt quite hurt. And she was just looking at Baba. And she said to me, she's told me about this, that he opened one eye opened, and he winked at her. Like, don't worry, this is all just a show. It is, after all, he always said to Bauji also, "I'm not this body. Body is just body. He is the one, he is our Almighty, he's the highest of the high." And she was so comforted by the fact that he just winked at her like that in his humorous way. And she felt that in Gujarati ke mari laaj evane mari laaj rakhi. I'm sure you all understand that. Like he looked after her in that sense. I hope this makes sense.
Yeah, we were reminded of that when Jimmy Bhai, you were talking about how Baba opened his eyelid.
Oh, not
So,
open it. He said he saw it fluttering.
Fluttering, yeah. Thank you very much. It's wonderful to hear.
Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Wonderful to hear you talking, and thank you, Roshni, for showing the pictures.
Thank you so much, Tim, and Leelaji, thank you so much. Yes, indeed. This was the same story connected to the title, The Fragrance on the Hill, right? About the roses, fragrance coming out from the Samadhi.
Yes. And oh, there was one more thing. Before this, where this she had seen the sheet moved and all that, a few days before, Donkin had come up and he spent quite a lot of time in the crypt, in the Samadhi. Then he went over to see her, had a cup of tea with her and spent a bit of time. And then he went back to the Samadhi and then he left. Actually, he passed away within 4 days of that time. But during that time, this fragrance lasted 4 days. It was so much so that people sort of got to hear of it and kept coming up to sort of as if something great, of course it is great, but Baba wouldn't want want people to sort of think in anything else except that he's there always. And obviously Donkin must have had a very close experience with Baba because this fragrance was amazing. But that was for 4 days all over the hill. It was just really beautiful. But Mansari talked about this, and it was such a special experience for her. Of course, she had been, from that point on, she was looking after the Samadhi. She would lock up, she would open. And so she was seeing this all the time, whatever changes might happen.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Neeraji, once again, and Tim for the lovely share.
Organizing this, and thank you, Jimmy Baijan, for sharing these very intimate, special moments of yours.
Yes, Elizabeth, please unmute.
Yes, I'm so glad I joined today. I was debating because I've seen the Interment film before, but I wanted to hear what Jimmy had to say. But I'm really glad. And I was really fascinated by what he said about the eyes fluttering. And I just wondered, the eyelids, I'm sorry, he said they did not open. I just was wondering if he could talk about that a little bit more, but also talk about what his thinking and feeling, so mind and heart at the time and then later upon reflection. And I also just wanted to say that I have smelled a fragrance. I don't know if it's the same fragrance, but the most incredible fragrance. It doesn't exist in this world, but it's similar to a combination. This was at the Samadhi, and it started on the side, on the right side, where the women mandali were, and it got stronger and stronger and stronger until I got to Little Khorshid. And I took huge breaths. I must have looked like an idiot to people because I would bow down and take in a huge breath. But, and I didn't know what in the world it was. All the flowers had been removed.
And Dolly was there at the Samadhi. She was handing out prasad at the time. I said, Dolly, what is that smell? And she says, I don't smell anything. And, I think I asked several other people, and I said, well, is it the flowers that they've removed from the Samadhi? Because it was toward the end, probably of an evening Samadhi, Archie. And she said, no, they're gone. And I was just baffled. And she said, it's his essence or something like that. And that's the only explanation. And I have off and on smelled that fragrance again, just in little whiffs, nothing like in India. It's the same fragrance. It comes at very strange times. And so anyway, I'm sure that's something similar to seeing something as unusual as Baba's eyelids flickering after he supposedly had dropped his body. I just wanted to hear what Jimmy had to say. Uncle Jimmy. If I could call him Uncle Jimmy.
Whatever suits you is welcome here. Elizabeth, point number one is that I had been a Baba lover for almost a decade, almost a year, and not once the thought had passed that Baba will one day drop his body and be gone. Not once. In 8 to 10 years that I was with Baba. And suddenly, like a bomb, Mother walks in on the 31st night to tell us, me and my sisters, that Baba had gone. And I was in a state of shock as much as my sisters were, as much as my mother was. So that is point number one as to what I felt when I got the news. And on seeing Baba's body, I was very, I don't know what exactly the word is in English, but I was kind of in a state of shock that, is this Meher Baba? Is this really Meher Baba? Because I had seen Meher Baba more than 100 times. More than 100 times, and I'm sure that I'm not a bit exaggerating. I had seen Baba more than 100 times, and suddenly you see him with his eyes closed, all wrapped up. There was this sense of shock. So this is my first emotion. The other, talking about Baba's eyes flickering. I wanted Baba to give me a sign, some kind of a sign. And he gave it to me in this form of his eye flickering. So I was hoping that there'll be more of it, but no. He just gave me a sign because I asked for a sign. And that is it. That is it. So these are my answers in brief.
And how did your heart feel?
Sorry.
How were you feel? How was your heart feeling?
Kind of, you're talking about the heart, right?
Yeah. So.
Well, it was, there was a sense of deja vu, there was a sense of defeat, kind of, that Baba is gone. We never dreamt that Baba will be gone. We never dreamt that we will never go to Pune again. We will never go to Guru Prasad again. And suddenly the whole world crashes under your feet. So that is what you feel, that life is over now. No more going to Guru Prasad.
So enormous grief is what you're saying.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so the flickering of the eyelashes then, did that take you past your grief or give you some comfort or give you some hope or faith or, I mean.
No, the answer is no. The grief continued for a while.
Thank you so much for
Sure.
sharing that. I'm sure that's harder to share really than the physical viewing. The eyewitness account is really important, but those of us who didn't meet Baba, we didn't get to be around him and feel him, and the joy and the laughter and all of those, every emotion and feeling from the heart, as well as all the thoughts that you could have. To share that is a real secret. And thank you so much, because it's a very intimate thing, and I appreciate your sharing. Thank you. Jai Baba.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Thank you so much.
You're welcome,
Yes.
Roshni.
It's so good to see you all after so long. And we have Ralph to ask something. Yes, Ralph, please unmute. Jai Baba.
Well, I decided to chime in on the topic of the fragrance. And I'm sure we all have our fragrance, or Baba has a fragrance for everyone, but I really don't know. The fragrance I would smell near Baba's tomb at times, I wondered if it was associated with the bougainvilleas that were in bloom. I never paid that close attention, but it was a notable fragrance. And I think I may have mentioned it to Mansari, and we determined it was not the bougainvillea. But years passed, and I eventually ended up coming to Texas to care for my parents. I'd been living in Myrtle Beach most of those years. And this is a semi-arid area, a little bit similar to Mehrabad in the Ahmednagar area. And one day, we live out in very rural area, and strolling across the landscape one day with my dog, I caught the scent that I had smelled at Mehrabad. And I just froze in my tracks and was transported to the most amazing state of mind. I was just really took me right to Mehrabad. And I looked around me to see if it was coming from somewhere, or if Baba was trying to get my attention, which I'm sure it was both. And there was a bush there that was in bloom. It had tiny little thorns. I remember as a child, my dad used to work in the wilderness at times and would take me with him. And he referred to this bush and the wait a minute bush. He says, now, when you walk past this bush, if your clothes hang up on these tiny little thorns, he says it's called cat claw, but we also call it the wait a minute bush. Don't pull or you'll cut yourself. But if you wait a second, and if it's attached to your clothing, it'll usually just let go. So we call it wait a minute. And that's the bush that was in bloom, that cat claw or wait a minute bush, and it has a more universal name, and I can't remember it at the moment. But I did vouchsafe, over time, that when that bush is in bloom, that aroma was about it. And it is a really ethereal, heavenly fragrance. and it was the fragrance I used to smell it. And no doubt that bush probably is native to the area around Maribot. However, I never noticed it or, went to the trouble to look for some physical evidence of where that fragrance came from. But it may also be, and who knows, I just wanted to share that. But regardless of where it came from, it was coming from the nature here. I always feel Baba always springs into my veins when I catch that fragrance every time. Jai Baba, thank you.
Jai Baba Ralph. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Is there
I wonder if Jimmy ever caught that any scent that seemed related to Baba's assurance that he wasn't going to leave us or something, anything of that nature.
Well, I heard earlier that Baba did mention to the women party that I will be sleeping. Something like that. Not exactly verbatim, but to the effect that I'll be in coma, something like that. So when Baba did actually pass on, the women monthly were not ready to accept what the doctors had to say, that Baba had already gone. And they just kept telling themselves that Baba is in a state of coma and he will rise again. Even my mother told me that Baba will rise. But I was in my early 20s and I knew that no, Baba is really gone. He's not going to wake up, he's not going to come back. But the women monthly believe that Baba will wake up again. So that's the answer.
Jai Baba? I will read this short paragraph from the Trust's website about the Samadhi murals and Helen Dam. In 1938, Baba instructed Swiss artist Helen Dam to paint the interior of his future tomb with colorful murals. Helen was living in the ashram on the hill along with the other women monthly from the east and west. The walls and dome of Baba's tomb had recently been built above the crypt he had long used as a place for his seclusion work. Another Swiss Baba lover living in Baba's ashram, Hedy Mertens, assisted Helen in painting the murals in Baba's tomb. Her account from an interview in an unpublished collection compiled by Ove M. Wittstock gets quite lively when she describes the fun they had with the painting. There was a bamboo scaffolding constructed inside for painting the upper walls and the dome. Helen at first did not trust the safety of the scaffolding, but Baba assured her it was Indian scaffolding and quite safe. But Helen refused to go up, saying she would only go up if Baba went up first. Finally, Hedy had to go up first and then Helen followed. Hedy would hold the palette, paints, and brushes, mix the colors, and hand Helen the paint laden brush. Helen would hold onto the bamboo structure or Hedy's hand with one hand and the paintbrush with the other as she painted the figures in the dome. I told Helen she didn't have enough space and she should make the apostle slimmer. Hedy laughed. Helen had a bold, free-flowing impressionistic style, and the paintings we see there today glow with a mystical warmth and charm. Within are three beautiful portraits of Baba, one on the left wall, one on the right wall, and one in the ceiling dome showing Baba surrounded by the apostles. Covering the walls and windows shutters are figures of people. Mani pointed out to us that the murals are designed to show the throngs of people facing and moving towards the center point at the back window, where a painting of Baba was to rest in the window opening. The painting that is there now is not part of Helen's work. However, Helen Dam did paint a portrait of Baba for that position on a movable piece of plywood, and it stayed there on the windowsill for some time. But Baba did not choose to use that painting for his Samadhi, and we will now never see it. In 1940, after Helen had left India, Baba had it removed from the Samadhi and indicated he didn't care for it. He asked another of his artists, Rano Gali, to paint his portrait and to use that bone. In other words, to paint right over Helen Dam's painting. Rano used to tell us that it was quite painful for her to paint over another artist's work, and she pleaded with Baba to be allowed to use a fresh canvas. But he was adamant, and she had to do as Baba asked. Rano's painting was a beautiful portrait of Baba, which now hangs in the museum at Mehrabad. Baba also did not choose to place Rano's portrait in the window of his tomb. Rano asked Baba if he wanted a painting for that position, and he gestured, "Not now, later." Much later, after Baba had dropped his body, Mehra asked a Baba lover artist, Charles Morton, to create a portrait in stained glass for the center window of the Samadhi. Charlie worked for years on the project in consultation with Mehra, Mani, and Rano, first creating a painting before approaching the work in glass. In 1991, Mani decided that the completed painting should itself be installed there. Thus, it is Charlie Morton's painting, adapted from a photograph of Baba, chosen by Mehra, that now holds the place of the honor. As written by Irene Holt for Avtar Meher Baba Trust. Avtar Meher Baba Ki Jai.